Hello everybody, welcome back to Catnap Books. In this video, I'm going to talk about how the bookstore came to be. If you check out some of my other videos, you'll see like when I first got the keys, what the bookshop looked like, what it looked like a couple of weeks after it opened, and then a week or two ago, how it's been open for about 8 months and what it looks like. But I never really talked about how it all came to be. At least I don't think I did. Sorry if this is repeat information for you. So basically, if you don't already know, my name is Selby. I'm an American, but I live in the Netherlands. I live in a city called Haarlem, and it's about a 15-minute train ride from Amsterdam. It's a nice little town. It's great to come visit. It's really cute and quaint. We love it here. Anyway, so we moved here about 3.5, almost 4 years ago. And opening a bookshop was not on the agenda when we moved here. I was actually writing bilingual children's books. Well, I was writing children's books, nonfiction children's books, and then getting them translated so that they would be bilingual to help kids learn another language. It started with helping my daughter learn Dutch, but then I would put it in other languages as well. You can find those on Amazon or whatever. But anyway, I don't really do that now because I'm a bit busy. But after about a year of living here or so, we realized that there wasn't, quite quickly we realized that there wasn't an English only bookstore, but it was also kind of hard to get English books. And which, makes complete sense. We're in the Netherlands. We are not in an English speaking country. So having it be hard to get English books, it completely makes sense. But we also realized that there are a lot of expats here. There's a lot of Dutch who like to read in English. There's a lot of demand for English books. It just wasn't being met or couldn't be met by the current amount of bookstores that we had in town. Obviously, they cater to Dutch readers because this is a Dutch town and it makes complete sense. But being as no matter how much I study, I'll probably never get to the point where I can read like a murder mystery in Dutch and understand what's going on. I realize that there's a lot of people like me that need this resource of an English language bookshop, especially. So how this really started out. So let's go back maybe 2 years now. So my friend whose daughter goes to the international school, it was her birthday, and I was like, okay, what should we get her for her birthday? I was like, oh, I bought a book. So I go to the local bookshop and they had like 3 choices for her age group and reading level. And I was like, yeah, there's the international school here is pretty big. So I thought this was, a bit lacking. Not to bash on that bookstore in any way, shape, or form. That is not their target demographic. But I was like, there's a need here. And children's books are one of my passions. I used to work at the Seattle Public Library, and I worked in the kids section a lot, and getting books into kids' hands is just really important to me. So I thought, oh, it'd be great if we had an English language bookshop here so that the kids that don't know Dutch or are bilingual like my daughter have access to the books that will entertain them and the like. And I was like, whoa, slow down there. How about you do a pop-up shop first and see how that goes? So I did. So I did my first pop-up shop about 2 years ago at my local community center. It's called the Bad House. It's the bath house, basically, for our neighborhood. That's where the communal bath used to be. It's an old city. And then I did a couple more throughout that year, and I was like, yeah, this is great. This is working. People really like this. There's a need for this. And so I was like, okay, honey, I'm gonna look for a shop. Now, someone asked like if I could talk about how I started the shop. I can't tell you really great details on like the business side because that's going to be different for everyone. You're going to have to decide what kind of structure works best for you. We have a BV. We already had one coming here. So we kind of did that 4 years ago, and I can't remember exactly what we did. You would have to research if you wanted to do something like this. You'd have to research about what you specifically needed. But basically, we already had a business set up here in the Netherlands, and we had the business bank account and all of that stuff. And so I just needed to find a place, a physical retail shop. And there's places like Funda, and there's a couple other ones. I don't remember them off the top of my head. But where I would just go and look and see, oh, what's available. And I looked at a couple other spots, but they were like really small, or they needed a lot of, not work. Like there was one spot that was really new, but I needed to put in like the flooring and do all this other stuff, which I didn't have a lot of money to start. Excuse me, I need my morning tea so I can keep talking. And then I just happened on this place. So it had a sign in the window like te huur, which means to let, to rent. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. It's right on what's called the Kruisweg, the street that goes from the central station down to the center of, or the central station, so Haarlem Central, the station, to the Grote Markt, which is the center of town. So I was like, oh, that's a great location. And then I asked to see it, and it's this nice big space, and the rent was reasonable. The place is a little funky and old, but I was like, oh, that works for a used new bookstore. Like, you kind of want a funky old shop. Like, to me, it just worked, and I didn't have to put in new flooring or do a lot to it. I could focus all of my monetary resources on, you know, getting bookcases and books and that kind of stuff, rather than having to be like, here's a new floor and let's build a different wall and let's, you know, add all this extra stuff. Because this was like on a budget. Like I had a certain budget, and if I came in under budget to open, that was great. Very minimal. I think I spent about 25,000 euros to get everything up and running. And that includes like the first month's rent, the deposit, and, you know, which is like 3 months rent and something, and all the VAT that goes along with that. And then VAT is value added tax, if you don't know. Anyway, and then bookcases and books and stuff. So I really, really did this like on the cheap, as cheaply as possible. And you can kind of tell, like when the bookshop opened, I didn't have a ton of inventory. I was really picky about the other things that I carried. I didn't have a lot of money to splurge on like a lot of cards or a lot of stickers or a lot of anything. And there was like very few new books. I was just like, oh, you know, like I think I spent maybe 200 or 300 euros. That was a big order for me back then, like 300 euros ordering a bunch of new books to put in the front. That was huge. And really nerve-wracking. You know, when I pushed the button and it's like, oh my God, I just spent 300 euros on books. Anyway, now it's like, that's every week minimum, which is good. It means that I'm selling books. Anyway, so then, yeah, so I did everything myself. I didn't really have any help. I had a couple people come in and, you know, help me organize and stuff. But basically I learned I can put together a Billy bookshelf in about 20 minutes. I've done so much and I've got it down really well. I tried to get as much furniture. I'm looking at the furniture. That's why I'm not looking at you. So I'm looking at the furniture. I tried to get as much furniture as I could from the secondhand store. There's one in town called Zolder 123, Zolder 23. That has a lot of great stuff. And so they just know me. They know me now. They know me by name. I'm like, oh, hey, you're back for more stuff. I'm like, yep, that's me. I'm getting more things. But then of course, like they didn't have that many bookshelves and I need things to kind of be, you know, as reasonable as possible. So I did end up having to go with the IKEA bookshelves because like I said, things are on a budget. I would have loved to have unlimited cash to get a custom built everything, but you know, I just can't do that. Maybe someday, we'll see. So I started with just the front room. So I'm in the back room now. Well, not the back room, but like the back half. So I started with just the front half. So really like the shop has doubled in size basically, more or less, since the first opening. Because now we have this back room and I made this I had a lot of cardboard. So I made a tree out of this is all cardboard and glue and tissue paper, crepe paper. You got to be creative when you don't have a lot of money to start something. So everything was done by myself, basically, a little help from my husband and a few friends. But yeah, and that's how we've been running the shop. This was not the goal in life to open a shop in the Netherlands. It just kind of happened. Would I recommend this to other people? It really depends. I found a need in my community for something, but if you someone who's still living in the United States asked me about moving to the Netherlands and opening a bookshop. And I wasn't the most positive about it, because if you don't already live here or where you want to open the bookshop, if you're thinking about opening a bookshop and you don't live in the community in which you want to open it, then that makes it really hard to know where is a good spot, where's a good location. If someone was to come to the Netherlands and they didn't know the towns, they didn't know the demographics of certain places, they didn't know where was the foot traffic and things like that, they might end up, getting a spot in a town or place that wouldn't sustain a physical shop. My husband and I thought about moving to Zanzachans, or not Zanzachans, but Zandam, which is north of Amsterdam. It's a smaller community, it's a little bit cheaper, but I realized that if we moved there, then the pop-up bookshops that I was doing at that point, there wasn't enough, it wasn't big enough, and probably wasn't enough need there to open a physical location. And also the way that their city is kind of formed, it's a little bit different. Like, there's not a city center like here in Haarlem. It's more of like this long, thin strip, because it goes up by the river. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But anyway, choosing the location of where you put a physical bookstore really matters. One of the locations I looked at was less than a block. Like, you could see the train station from the location. It was on a corner. You could see the train station, but it's on a route that nobody walks. I've lived here for almost 4 years, and I have only ever been to that street to look at that property. So it tells you that, like, that's not a high traffic area. And I'd say 50 to 75% of the people that come into the shop, it's just because they happen to walk by. We happen to be on one of the most traveled streets from the station to downtown. Especially, it's tourist season now this time of year. People just pop in, they say English Bookshop. I mean, some of them just want directions or have a question, which is totally fine. But then they're like, ooh, I need a book too. So that works out well. But, it's just one of those things that, like, you really got to know the demographics, and you've got to know about where you are before you open a physical shop. And luckily I had lived here for, 2.5, almost 3 years before we opened the shop. So I had a really good idea of the lay of the land and where would be a good spot and how much I could potentially make and all of that good stuff. And I had already started making contacts with the pop-up to get more books. And then, of course, once I had a physical shop, then people want to come in and sell me books and give me books all the time. So that worked out great. So you just really have to know your location before you start to do something. If you live one place and you want to move to another town or country or whatever and start something new, knowing that place can sustain whatever business you want to make, unless it's like, you work from home kind of a thing. You just have to do some research, basically. So I'm not being like, oh, so negative about it. But if you happen to be an American who's trying to leave the US and thinks, oh, opening an English language bookshop in another country is going to be an easy, fun thing to do, it's not easy. A lot of times it is fun, but there's a lot of times where it is not fun. And we are still working on making a living income from it. We do get paid I don't get to pay myself every month, basically. January and February were not good. I mean, they were pretty bad for sales. So we paid rent and that was about it. There wasn't a lot left over to pay ourselves. Luckily, my husband has a job and we've got some savings. And we have gotten to pay ourselves at other months, other times of the year where things have been better. But again, with starting a business, starting a physical retail shop, you have to understand that you might not get paid all the time. And you have to factor that in. Like, can you do that? Can you work for a month or two and not get any financial gain from it? And you probably have to work harder than you would expect. So that's just just how life is. So I hope that that gives you a little idea about why there is now an English bookshop here in Haarlem. And if you are visiting our lovely city, going to see the Kookjehof on the tulips, and you want to come say hi, come say hi. All right, I'll see you later. Doei.